Good morning and welcome to this special edition of East African Budgets. We break from our normal programming to bring to you in-depth analysis on what you can expect from Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda and Uganda. My name is Beatrice Gashenge. Now, Kenya's 2014-2015 total size of the national budget stands at a whopping 1.8 trillion shillings, or slightly above $20 billion, and this represents a 13% increase compared to the previous fiscal year. Now, it is the largest budget of East Africa's biggest economy, with heavy expectations placed on the Kenya Revenue Authority. Now, taxes are expected to fund over 60% of the national budget, translating to about 1.2 trillion shillings, and that is up from last year's 1 trillion shillings. However, this is coming against a backdrop of sluggish economic performance, and we are looking specifically at the sectors such as agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing. While joining me in studio for a breakdown of some of those numbers is Aly Khan Satchu. He is a CEO of Rich Management and my co-anchor today, and also I have Nikhil Hira. He is a tax partner at Deloitte East Africa. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. Now, looking at the East Africa budget, when I spoke to you, Nikhil, you said that you used the word outrageous to discuss and to describe this budget. But before we go to what is outrageous about this budget, Aly Khan, for you, what would you say are the biggest winners of this budget?
Well, I think clearly security from the numbers that I saw, and I think that's necessary. You know, we all know the degrees of insecurity we've been encountering. It's had a big impact on the economy already. I think part of the budget issue is going to be the slowdown that we're seeing, and I think that slowdown is gaining more traction, and that's what I have a problem with. But I think that's the big winner as far as I can see. Nikhil, what did you think?
Well, outrageous, maybe slightly larger than I thought, but
yes.
I think the issue here is that we are, year in, year out, we're increasing our budgets. You know, we were standing at 1 trillion, I think, in 2009. We're sitting at 1.8 trillion today. Admittedly, we're not spending all this. Government procurement is such that money is actually being returned or used.
Because the underspend has been very high.
It's very significant. But what concerns me above everything else is that there is nothing in here that says we're going to bring down our recurrent expenditure. So we've got, you know, a wage bill that is ballooning, and that's partly because of the devolution, which is a good thing, but clearly what we haven't done is streamline central and decentralized government, and as a consequence we've got a ballooning wage bill, which I think at one point was sitting at over 50% of current revenue collections. So we're not focusing at all on development. I mean, the whole lot of fancy projects that have been talked about, the railway, airports in 3 different parts of the country.
And the port in Lamu.
The port in Lamu, Konza City, etc. But where are we going to get the money to pay for this? And I think
now you tell us,
yes.
now where do we get
outrageous.
this money? We're looking at a deficit of almost 342 billion shillings. And if you look at taxes, which are expecting collect 1.2 trillion shillings, and this is 13% higher than what they were expecting last year. Yet the Kenya Revenue Authority has not actually met those targets. If you look at the first 9 months of last year, they've only been able to collect 647, which is below the target of about 740 billion shillings. So then again, if you're asking for 1.2 trillion shillings, are they going to be able to deliver?
And if you look into that data from last year, the
Yes.
slowdown is expanding in the 3rd and 4th quarters, I think. That's what I came away with. So this is estimating a year-on-year growth rate where the real economy is beginning to slow. The pillars of our economy, tourism, very soft. If you look at tea prices, 1-year lows. So, you know, the big pillars to me, Nikhil, seem to me to be extremely soft and sending a different message to what a plus 14% increase in revenue collection is sending.
I think what is very clear to me is that we are not going to get a 17% increase in current revenue collections. It is not going to happen.
Why is that?
If it does happen, I will be the happiest man alive, but I can tell you that it's not going to happen. We have, as Aly Khan said, a sluggish economy. There is almost no consumer confidence. I was asked yesterday, why isn't VAT doing what it's supposed to do? Well, one of the reasons is we brought a new VAT Act in. It came in midway through the financial year, so we haven't seen the full impact of 1 year. But VAT is a consumption tax. If there is no consumer confidence, if tourism is taking the hit that it's taking, VAT is not going to rise. It's just not going to, because people are not consuming. And couple that with the fact that we have not changed our personal tax bands in this country for 10 years now. So in real terms, disposable income has probably gone down. You can understand why people are actually not spending. And then you add NSSF, which starts this month.
Yes.
So 6% contribution. I'm all for saving for one's retirement.
But it makes the Kenyan employer more
Absolutely.
expensive.
Exactly. Well, you know, whether you save it in NSSF or you contract out into a private scheme, you need to save. But you can't take 6% more from disposable income when you haven't changed the tax bands. And you know, if there's really a plea for me to Mr. Rotich, it's change the tax bands, please.
So,
expand them.
Besides changing the tax band, how do we broaden the revenue tax base? How do we broaden revenue collection? Because I think that's where the white elephant is.
Okay, now that is something that we have been trying to do for a very long time, and we've been singularly unsuccessful. Why? Well, I think probably 60 to 70% of our economy is in what we call the Juakali sector or the informal sector. By their very nature, they're nomadic. So you pick Aly Khan today sitting here and you register him for tax. When I come to collect from him, he's moved over here and I don't know where he is. But what I found interesting, when they launched the economic survey at the end of May, they said we have created 740,000 jobs in the informal sector. Now, if you can count the number of jobs you've created in the informal sector, why aren't you bringing them into the tax net? I mean,
what is the issue? Why are we not able to bring them in? I mean, Aly Khan, for you from where you're sitting, you pay your taxes as a corporate.
Absolutely.
Why are we not able to get the small and medium enterprises to pay taxes?
This comes to the other point, actually, if I can just go to it first, is that the band of taxpayers is extremely narrow and they're being squeezed like a lemon. And after a while, you can't squeeze them anymore. And this goes back to then the point is such a big piece of our economy is in the informal sector, as Nikhil is saying. And so far, we have not made any, we have not been able to collect anything from this sector. And I think that's going to be the key challenge. And until we do that, I think we're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. People paying taxes are getting squeezed way too hard. In many cases, they're not getting their VAT back. They're suffering cash flow problems for being straightforward and honest and not being captured. For being captured.
So where are we getting the money? I mean, we're looking at domestic debt coming in at 193 billion shillings. And of course, last year they had a figure, but they overshot that figure. We are looking at loans coming in at 182 billion shillings. We have grants at 58 billion shillings. But we still have a deficit, even with this in place. And we have now the Eurobond, which we're now using as the savior that will actually help the country to the next step. For you, what are the thoughts when you look at all these fragmented ways of raising funds?
Well, apart from the fact that we don't seem to be focused, I think we're losing focus here a little bit. You know, there's nothing wrong with having debt to finance our economy. And I think it's now sitting at about 52% of GDP.
Is that sustainable for you, 52%?
52% to me is not necessarily a number that's going to break us or anything like that. The issue is that if we are not using that debt to invest in the future of the economy, if we're using it to pay a bloated civil service,
that's the challenge.
Then the debt is of no use to us whatsoever. We're talking about the Eurobond, and I know, Aly Khan, we had a chat. We think it's going to really do very well, 4 or 5 times oversubscribed, etc. But what are we going to do with that 150 billion shillings or whatever the number is that is coming in? I think already 1/3 of it is earmarked to roll over into other debt.
Yes.
The 600 million syndicate loan.
Right.
Then there's a lot of talk
which
about
they've
800 million
rescheduled.
is the down payment for the railway, so
Exactly.
net new money.
So at the end of the day, we are robbing Peter to pay Paul effectively.
Haven't we always done that? But is it not becoming,
but-
are we running out of steam?
But what's interesting in this year is if you look at things like Ghana's Eurobond, you look at Zambia's Eurobond, the markets have punished governments which have not got a handle on their recurrent expenditure. And Zambia rallied this week only because there was talk of the IMF coming in. I think the question is, when will Ghana capitulate?
Yeah.
So you can look forward and say to yourself, if we continue down this path, where we are giving now the ability to international bondholders to price our credit on a real-time basis, which I don't think our policymakers have really understood the implications of. What could happen further down the road if we continue down this path?
Well, 70% of our budget does fund recurrent expenditure.
So how
just
much
about
free
30%.
cash flow, how much free
Yes.
money have we got every year for more than $30 billion worth of projects? Let's just put it in that basic number. How much free money have we got to support that?
I would say it's next to nothing. It's
That's
negligible. It's negligible. I mean, that's the problem. And coming back, it was to your question about why can't we expand the tax net? And Aly Khan, you made a very valid point there. We have squeezed the lemon completely. This golden goose has stopped laying eggs.
Yeah.
And as I've repeatedly said, if you go after the same taxpayers year in, year out, the marginal increment in collections you're going to make is going to be insignificant. Because any taxpayer, if you catch him out this year having made a mistake, he will be exceedingly stupid to do the same thing next year. So at some point, you're going to reach that tipping point where everything is going to be completely clean.
Are we at that tipping point?
We're very, very close to it. And I think that is reflected. I think corporate, you were talking about first 9 months cash
Yes.
collections. Collections from corporate tax have actually gone down as a percentage. And that is probably because there's no more to be had. And I keep hearing these things about, the multinationals are in Africa to rip off the people. No, that's not the case. Yes, there are instances where some people are fraudulently setting their transfer price, but at the end of the day, no one is looking at what the multinationals are doing in terms of creating employment, VAT, excise duty, etc. We look at one number and we say, oh, they're not paying corporate tax. The fact is that we give them a whole load of incentives which make them not pay corporate tax. So, take the incentives out. Incentives don't necessarily mean that private investors will come in.
10-year tax holidays.
It doesn't help. It just erodes your tax base. In fact, if you look at the list of things that an investor will look at in a bid to come and invest somewhere, tax probably sits at 8 or 9 in that list of 10.
And talking of corporate tax, of course, we'll also look into perspective of East African breweries, because after the exemptions were removed on the Senator Keg, which is the low-end beer.
That's a classic
Precisely.
example of dysfunctional tax policy. Right?
Because they've actually only collected 2.4% on top of the projected 50% increase on introduction of the excess duty on the low end.
How many people lost their jobs? What was the damage to the exchequer? It's huge. And their calculation was they're going to take $100 million of tax.
And they're not anywhere near that.
And I think that's where, when Nikhil is talking about a tipping point, this is when the dysfunction causes real damage in the economy because of that dysfunction in the policy making.
Do you see a change?
Short-term thinking.
Yes.
That is the problem, short-term thinking. Let me give you another example. We introduced excise duty on bank charges.
Yes.
When we introduced it, we said we'll collect about $1 billion or $1.5 billion as a result of that 10% excise duty. So $1 billion drop in the ocean in our 1.8 trillion. Of that $1.5 billion, I would say 60 to 70% is incurred by business. So it's tax deductible. So you're losing 30% of it straight away.
Wow.
So at the end, you'll probably collect $1 billion, maybe 900 million, 800 million, and look what you have done to the cost of doing business. We are not focusing on making it easier to do business in this country. That is critical. Today, an average business probably makes 60 payments of tax a year. By the time you add corporate tax, installment tax, PAYE, VAT, etc.
We need all that harmonized.
We need it all harmonized. We need to make it easier. We attempted to put NSSF with PAYE. Didn't work because NSSF used their NSSF number, KRA used the PIN number. Now here's a classic case. The PIN number came in 1992. Idea, anything that Nikhil does will come up on his PIN number. And they should be able to see, I'm taking an electricity connection, but I'm declaring income of 10,000 shillings. But there's no interface. The PIN number is not interfacing with Kenya Power, with Telcom, with the Lands Office. So that interface is not there. We're not using technology as much as we should.
Well, and when we return, we'll be looking at now some of those issues that we've mentioned. We'll take a short commercial break, and on return, we're going to put those numbers into perspective. Will the Kenya economy expand fast enough to support over 60% of the national budget? Now, those answers are coming right after this break. Don't touch that dial. problem.
Oh, is it?
Oh, do you have your phone?
I
Sorry?
don't have the phone.
It's okay, we continue.